Welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Annalise Klingbeil.
I'm Leah Ward.
And I'm Shannon Phillips.
Welcome. We're reunited after, I think it's been like a month apart. So I'm happy. Feels longer. Summer. I'm happy to see you both. We've got lots to talk about today as usual, but Shannon, I want to start with is some sad news that I think we need to address. Over the weekend, a close friend of yours and an important figure in the NDP and the Labour movement in Alberta and the Yukon passed away. Do you want to tell us, Shannon, I think just to start off a bit about Jeff and your friendship? And I think I want to express my condolences to you, and I think everyone listening as well. But tell us about Jeff, please.
Yeah, so Jeff Sloychuk. Oh, man. I met Jeff Sloychuk in 2004 when I was an organizer for the federal NDP for Layton's first election. He ran for us in Red Deer and increased the vote by a few percentage points. And so we would laugh for the 25 years later, or however many years, 22 years later, we would always laugh at, the incremental progress that was made. And, by the time, if we kept going at that rate, sometime in 2075, we'd elect a new Democrat there.
Slow but steady.
Slow and steady. Sloychuk went on to organize for the party. He worked in the labor movement. He moved out to the Yukon, a while back, before we were in government anyway. He came back and worked some elections here. He was always bouncing around, but he bounced around the building trades end of the labor movement, carpenters, teamsters, back to carpenters. He was what I would call one of the more grassrootsy labor organizers that I've ever met. He understood labor and working class politics in his bones. He had no real time for people who messed around in other parts of left politics. It was always very working class. He emceed my wedding. He was the funniest person I ever knew. Our jokes were extremely hilarious. We were two of the funniest people you've ever met, I swear to God, when we were together. And he was the funniest person anyone ever met, with a whole bunch of my other friends too, because he was just so funny. And he always saw the absurdity, but he always saw the importance of everything that we did. He organized, even in early stages of a cancer diagnosis, aid to Ukraine. He took it there himself. He was a very, very proud Ukrainian. That's all I want to say right now.
Thanks for sharing that, Shannon. Yep. Thank you.
A lot of people mourning that loss.
Yeah, he was a wild man. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school when I say that I don't know if any of us expected to, go into our ninth decade with Sloychuk in our rocking chairs. I think we always thought that maybe Sloychuk would take Neil Young's advice and better to burn out than to fade away. I think that's real, and that's a true fact, that he lived pretty hard. I didn't expect him to go before 50. So I feel a lot of regret that I didn't, we had just, last time I talked to him, I was like, yeah, I really want to bring the kids up to Whitehorse. And I didn't do it for this summer, and I should have. So don't do that, people. Don't take a pass on your friendships like that. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. So I made a commitment to his sister that I would make sure that people in our world, because Jeff had a lot of different friends, right, in a lot of different corners of his life, but in progressive NDP land and labor movement land, once I know all of the arrangements, I will make sure they're all on my official channels. There, I pulled it together. Look at that. I pulled up the nose. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Shannon.
Like a pro. Thanks, Shannon.
Hey, let's what should we talk about first? Let's talk about August. It's summer. It's the middle of August. I want your take on what is a politician to do in August, especially in like these times that we're living in, especially in Alberta, gearing up for the fall. Is August just like a take a break, rest, recharge? Leah, your stab first. What are your tips? What's your recommendation for what's a politician to do in August?
It's a bit of a cop-out to say it depends, but I think it really depends. Like, is it an election year? Are you in government? Are you looking at session starting up right away? The federal government has moved their budget cycles, so that also changes things. So I think, there's the standard response could be to do the barbecue circuit, reconnect with your constituents, which definitely should be on the agenda. But I think good political operatives consider sort of the longer arc and what else is coming up and what to get ready for. And not being in session is an opportunity to do a lot of things that you can't do when you're bound by the House schedule. So, if you're in government and preparing for budget, you might be doing a bunch of stakeholder outreach and building some support. If it's an election year, you might be fundraising and door knocking and building a team of volunteers to get a campaign up and running. I'd be looking at what's coming up before really deciding on how to spend the summer months. I guess at some point, probably take a break. That's an often forgotten part of the summer that, I think even staff should probably protect more from their principles.
And then jump in. What did August look like when you were environment minister?
I always tried to take some time off at around this time because it's after Stampede, which you can't really take off at that time in Alberta politics anyway. And then
summer doesn't even start till after Stampede.
Yeah.
So, and so I would protect time in August and then in the back to school window, which I found really important. But, so people should take time off and do all of that kind of stuff. But I do think two things about summer. So when Pierre Poilievre started to come up in the polls after he won the leadership, it was because they did a massive ad buy in the summer. And at that time, I remember thinking, what was it, 22, I want to say? I remember thinking, like, why are we buying all of the airwaves in the summer? Well, it kind of makes sense.
That's when he lost his glasses, though. He had to reintroduce everyone to his face.
But also people are looking at their phones in a different way in the summer. And in that summer of 22 was the first time that inflation started to bite. And so people really didn't like it. And the Tories took out a massive ad buy. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I remember some reporting on it out of, like Facebook and other publicly available metrics. And I have thought since then that, the barbecue circuit is one thing, and I sometimes don't even know what is meant by that. But I do know that blasting people on their phones in the summer months is not a terrible strategy. Seeing what it did to Poilievre's numbers, like it supercharged them in 22 and in 23. And I noticed they did that in both summers. They did, like, maybe if the principals are off taking their holidays or their staff or whatever, that's one thing. But the ads are not taking time off.
Yeah, it's interesting, Shannon, sorry to interrupt there. Your point about people using their phones differently in summer. Like, how would you, I know what you mean, but how would you describe it?
Well, I would say that they've got a little bit more time for like good news, local news, maybe longer form content. They're using their phones a lot less for work and a lot more for fun. So if you are advertising in spaces that are giving people their sports scores, or restaurant ads, that kind of stuff, if you are advertising in sports spaces,
places where people share vacation photos.
You're going to get more eyeballs on that. And where do people share vacation photos? Facebook. And Instagram, and so certainly there's that aspect to it. And so I just noticed that because it hadn't really occurred to me before that time of 21, 22, in that neighborhood of time when I saw the CPC do it, just how valuable some of that eyeball space might be. Right. And maybe they caught a wave on inflation, but some stuff that introduces the electorate to the principles as well, I think can be helpful, or introduces a way to think about a topic. And that's what they did with inflation. Right.
That's what came to mind when you started talking about that rebrand summer for Poilievre, is that it could be a good time for that. If you needed to make a big pivot, if you needed to recharacterize your principle, if you needed to shift public perception about the party, or like I said, if you're in government, perhaps opposition in his case, it is a good time because you have a bit of runway. And people are they're moving quickly. They're simultaneously distracted and kind of like more, have more time. So you get the benefit of extending something like that, where I think in the fall or the winter, the pace is just so fast. You have a shorter window to do that kind of thing. So I think that's an interesting point. The inflation thing drives me. I've probably talked about it on this podcast. I know I've talked about it on others, but he started Just Inflation while the pandemic was still happening, while people were still collecting CERB checks, while businesses were closed. It sounded so absurd and so out of touch and childish. I remember thinking at the time, what is this buffoon doing that will go nowhere? People want this. They support it. It's important. And lo and behold, by 2022, they had planted enough seeds that they were able to run an entire summer of ads effectively on the idea of inflation and placing that at the foot of Justin Trudeau's Liberals. So,
yeah, it's that repeat. Well, your point about kind of having more,
just on that, that's the clue as to what they're doing now and why they're not why they refused to pivot back at last year, why they haven't really done anything different now, because they learned
that's what they're
back
doing.
Then that you just keep going with the same thing, and eventually the tire treads will start to bite in the mud. That's what they think.
This is entirely at the heart of what seems like concrete-headed, bullish absurdity coming out of the Poilievre leadership camp right now. With it's infighting and people talking about resplitting the Conservative Party, undoing the Harper-McKay alliance. It is entirely this belief system that is keeping him in place and I think it's fueling him.
It's so interesting. It's just to go back on one thing you said there, Leah, the more capacity in the summer is it's interesting. I just feel like everyone is so much more chill and just has less on their plate. But then it also, when you're gathering with people outside or at barbecues or friends' houses, the conversations are deeper. They're not as rushed as throughout the rest of the year. It's very interesting to me because it's a good opportunity to test some of that stuff and see, kind of put it out there, and then have people be discussing it face to face, which we've talked about before, is so important, right?
I think that's really interesting.
On that note, I saw Smith had a post recently of a house kind of coffee party that she was at, and I know she's had several recently. I know people who've been to them. Talk to me about that strategy specifically in summer. Do you think it works? Do you think it's needed? Do you think it's just whatever? What are your thoughts about that small group in people's houses, face to face with a politician, particularly like the principal?
Well, she's fundraising. So she's pulling 5 figures at a minimum out of those rooms, depending on how many people and how many corporations donate out of it, maybe more. In both of the photos that I've seen that they've pushed out of these events, so I've only seen 2, they've been rooms of women. which I thought was interesting. It was not usually my practice to push out a bunch of photos when I was doing a fundraiser, especially in not those kind at all. Like maybe the big ones, but even still, like even when we held something at the Galt Museum or whatever, we didn't push out photos of fundraisers. Usually, like that's not what is done. So they're doing this for other reasons. Those people are expecting some sort of transactionalism to arise from it, to be on the right side of the government for whatever their issues are, that kind of stuff, would seem to me. And the government, I mean, what the premier is, well, not the government, but what the governing party is saying is we throw fundraisers and we don't care, or the people that attend them don't care if you know that they are, like bagman kind of donors to the UCP, which is is a flex. So good for them. But really, like for people who don't know that that's kind of like what's going on, and that you don't usually send out photos of fundraisers. What she's really showing us is, look, I have women friends. So congratulations, Danielle. You have like a half dozen.
But Shannon, it's interesting because I think the average person doesn't know that you don't normally post fundraiser photos. Right? Like I don't think that's like common knowledge amongst normies.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't because, it's not a party event in the same way, right? People are like, they get twitchy about money, right? And, sometimes they don't want their employer to know, or they don't want, you know what I mean? And so I was always respectful of that. I understood it. I mean, personally, it's no secret that I'm a New Democrat, so I don't really care if there's a private fundraiser and my photo was in it. If I wasn't, I would be asking why not. But I'm a different kind of fundraiser attendee than I think the norm.
Mm-hmm. What about specifically in Alberta with this thought that September is going to be just nuts with activity heading up to the referendum in October? Like, is August, for people who were involved in the campaign, is August a chance to make huge gains, to be planting seeds, or is it kind of to be working behind the scenes? Like, talk to me about the Alberta context right now.
This is your planning phase. So even if people are taking the first 2 weeks of August off, the second 2 weeks of August is time to focus the mind, right? Because if you're not actually deploying and moving things by end of August, like you're missing the boat, which is why I'll just note that Public Interest Alberta is launching their ground campaign sort of component at the end of August in Edmonton, Calgary, and Lethbridge. With 3 events. They're doing that at the end of August because they know people return to kind of, the drumbeat of politics and the political season. And so, that you do have to be getting your ducks in a row for some of that. Like it's kind of the same dynamic as a municipal campaign where you spend the last 2 weeks of August kind of pulling things together so that you can actually launch kind of after Labor Day.
You can hit the ground running.
I think it's also a time to think about like who needs to see your face. Who do you need to be in a room with? Who needs to have sort of a more personal or in-depth conversation that you're not going to have time for when things speed up, and thinking through what needs to be in place so that you don't get, an urgent requirement that you like go to Medicine Hat and sit in a room with 12 people in order to manage a particular issue. If you can get some of those relationships managed ahead of time, it's also like good to get ahead of.
Yeah. Do you think there is, I'm thinking there's been several campaigns that have launched on the stay side. There's also ones on the leave side. Do you think they're hitting the right people, or are there groups they're missing? And I will use that question to pivot and segue into another thing that I wanted to talk about, which was on my TikTok feed getting this was kind of a week or so before the WestJet strike, but seeing like paid partnerships with like, I'm going to put in quotes influencers because they're not who you would traditionally think of influencers, but paid partnerships with the union kind of explaining block time, explaining the issue of the strike, explaining what was going on before this strike happened. And then I will pivot back to kind of the question on, are there groups that have not yet or are not hearing the messages that they need to? That's a long question. We can dig into it.
Where do we want to start? So, I mean, the short answer to are there audiences we're not reaching is yes. And we've talked about that quite a bit on this show and many others. It's a bit of a theme of the time, I think, the way that the media ecosystem is changing, and the way that politics is changing as a result of that. So I think I think most people are aware that they're missing most people. Social media has also changed really quickly, and for organizations that have, maybe might want to pat themselves on the back for getting on board, by the time they figure out what they're doing, like the algorithms and the platforms have long surpassed them. So, what I mean by that is that a lot of organizations right now, I think, are probably still thinking of social media as a place to build an audience themselves, to disseminate a message, to run ads, much more with a broadcast mentality. And increasingly, that's not how social media is working. That's not how people are getting their information. It's not where they're being, influenced, for lack of a better word. And I think what I love about the choice that CUPE made to hire to partner with content creators is that it does both things. It reaches people where they're at, which is the thing that we get from social media, but it also it buys the audience. Yep. And in the media ecosystem that we're in right now, the unit of measure has changed. Like, the asset is no longer the ad, it is the audience. And so that's what you need to buy. Not only that, but by doing that, they were able, like, both of those videos that you shared in our group chat. So one of them was Henry Sir, and the other was, what was the other one?
Omar Muallim, who I'm putting it in quotes. He's like a pal. You wouldn't define Omar. He's like those who don't know, well-known Edmonton journalist, filmmaker, yes. Yeah, wonderful person. But he's not like a traditional influencer.
But he has an audience.
Sure, he has an audience.
Yep.
Both of those videos were excellent. They followed all of the rules of good communication. The lead was up top. It was interesting. It was dynamic. They broke it down into simple terms. It was captivating because they have an audience. They're trusted by those people to deliver a message like that. It was brilliant. I love everything about it. And I love to see Labour doing something that is sort of cutting edge for Canada. Influencers have been part of political advertising and digital spaces in the States for a couple of years, and we haven't quite figured it out up here. It hasn't reached Canada in the same way. But even in the States, it's only a couple years old, right? Like, we're talking, was it 2024 when the Dems they gave media credentials to a few hundred influencers? So, like, in a world where Labour often finds itself a decade or so behind on some of these trends, I'm quite excited to see them doing something so cutting edge and effective.
Thank you for answering my very long-winded question, Leah. With so many points to go off of, Shannon, you have things to say here.
Yeah, obviously this was really good. And what it did was it essentially built on the goodwill that the Air Canada flight attendants, also CUPE, built up last summer. And that was really important. So they already had a bit of a public understanding, right, of the concept of how flight attendants are remunerated over and how they've bargained collectively over the last few years, and what's in and what's out. So that was good. I think that the public opinion piece probably contributed to the fairly rapid resolution, but also the fact that Carney, and this has nothing to do with influencers, but it does have to do with whether influencers are going to be open to taking the flight attendant's side. Because like the reason, like things got pretty spicy last year. The Air Canada flight attendants did a really good job of, explaining, the unpaid work stuff. They got public opinion on their side, I was surprised. I remember saying this on The Strategist last year that I was actually quite shocked, the extent to which public opinion was on their side.
Same.
And stayed. But then also, like, Carney flew too close to the sun last year, right? He legislated them back within whatever it was, 24 hours.
No. He didn't legislate them back.
Right. He didn't legislate. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Code, sorry. Sorry. Labor nerd alert. Siren.
It would have been a bad move, but more democratic had he used back to work legislation, which is what you should do if you want to pull a dick move like that.
You should go and argue it.
You should have to defend it.
So he uses the section of the labor code to bring them, like, to force them back, right? But he didn't touch that and didn't go there in the first few hours of WestJet. And you can bet that he didn't give the signs to the CEO that he was going to intervene. And that actually lit a fire under the asses of the employer side bargaining team to get a deal, which will always happen. Especially in these times of, summer travel and everything, if the employer does not get the sense that government is going to rush in and swish their cape and help them out. And so that, was all to the good. But back to the influencer thing, I don't actually believe, public opinion has changed on labor issues broadly. Not as much as maybe it has in the States, but it has changed. We saw it through the teachers' strike. We saw it through Air Canada last year. A number of other labor disputes where the numbers are way more favorable to the labor movement than they have been in my memory anyway. And so I think what this is, then this has a snowball effect because more influencers are going to want to get on side with working class people and their struggles. If they see that it's going to be a popular thing to do, if they're going to get numbers off it, right? If their stuff is going to get a bigger reach, and if they're, through either their journalism or their comedy or whatever the case may be, if they're going to actually travel a little further into different niche markets, this tells us something about what the federal government and others should be doing on separation, I think. Yeah. And what the feds and others like Federalists should be doing in order to rouse people from their slumber on the referendum question.
Well, so that gets interesting because now we're talking about, is that political advertising?
I don't know. I mean,
make the rules, Leah. Who cares?
Nobody
does.
And in my view, at this point, given what elections Alberta has allowed Forever Canadian to do, everyone should just free jazz at this point. Like, do what you want,
there are no
everybody.
Rules.
There are no rules. There is no time signature. Like, just go for it.
Well, the thing is that the penalties are financial, right? And they're smaller penalties for an individual, larger penalties for an organization if you're caught in violation of election financing law. And these large third-party advertisers who, like you say, are just running roughshod over the rules are able to pay. And for them, the trade-off is worth it. For a content creator working out of a home office in Edmonton, those fines, have a much larger consequence. So it does, I agree. I think on the left we should break unjust laws more often.
I don't think there's a law here
and have those public debates. That's a good question. I don't think that we've figured out what the law says.
Which is nuts. Which is nuts that we don't know.
What's the difference between Henry Sir doing something that says, in his Alberta accent, like, hey, everybody, vote on October 19th, right on, Governor. What's the difference between that and me doing it as a private citizen? Like, absolutely none. Yeah, I guess.
He's paid to do it.
But I don't know if payment is required here. Honestly, for the federal government to talk to people about that, number one. Number two, I think it depends on what you say, because the Choose Unity sign on my front lawn is not advertising. And so if he were to say, be paid to say Choose Unity, I'm not sure that it would be advertising, because
is the Canada flag advertising?
No, it's not.
So if it were a placed ad, like if we go with what we know, if it were a placed ad and it said Choose Unity on October 19th, that counts as advertising because you're articulating how you would like someone to vote, or you're trying to influence somebody's vote. So in that case, that would be advertising. So if an influencer who is paid by a particular organization with that position says Choose Unity without adding the on October 19th, I think you might be able to argue that you are not.
That's what Lukaszuk is doing.
Like a referendum advertiser.
I mean, he's driving around the country or the province saying that. He's got signs. There's like literally 6 of them on my block that say Choose Unity in both official languages. That's all on side. But even if that influencer were to be paid to say something like, we need to reject division and any public policy that moves us towards, U.S.-style immigration rules that separate people from one another and that divide us.
Anyone can do that. Anyone can do that currently in an ad. Like you can do placement ads that do that.
Yep. That influencer could do that. That's fine. And they could be paid for that. And that does not count.
One quick plug, because you mentioned ground organizing, Shannon. I think next week, if all goes according to plan, or in the next little bit, we'll be doing our deep canvassing episode. So if anyone is listening and has questions about deep canvassing, perhaps join the Discord if you're not there already and throw them in, and we'll look at those before we record that episode.
August 11th.
Yeah, next week. Okay. On that note, let's end this episode. And
can I just wrap this up by saying this has been absolutely the Jeff Sloychuk Memorial episode, because we talked about ground organizing, we talked about labor, we talked about getting off your ass and just doing the thing at people's doorsteps, and we talked about taking it out of the ether and down to working class people putting money in their pockets. That's what he dedicated his life to. It's why we were friends since 2004. And rest in peace, my brother. You've been listening to Balance of Power Pod.
For an extended cut of this episode, go to Patreon and subscribe to the Strategist Podcast Network.
You can reach us at suggestionbox@balanceofpowerpod.ca. We always want to hear what you have to say. Our tech production is by Haxam, and our music is by Shayla Miller.